Okay, cool. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:32 and we'll go ahead with roll call.
All right, Director Ahuja.
Here, sorry about
Dir-
being late.
No worries. Director Bajaj.
Present.
Director Chow. Not present. Director Racy
Present.
and Director Waslowski.
Present.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and move on to public comment for items not on the agenda. So Jenny or Brandon, if you have anything to add, now's your chance.
Oh, that'll be nice coming back in person. We can see everybody for the first time. So we'll see how that goes. But keep our fingers crossed and good luck to everybody. Okay, thanks.
Hopefully I do get elected. I've been campaigning a lot, but I do look forward to coming in person. If hopefully with fingers crossed, it will probably be, actually it would be my first time going in person there, and in-person meeting. Since I believe this online meeting has been since 2020, right, Kevin?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Got it. So I look forward to meeting everyone in person and shaking hands and stuff like that. And I also look forward to wearing my suits. Prior to when I was in my other board as a board member, I always got a new suit every year, and now it's just hanging in my closet. So I look forward to wearing them again. I like dressing nicely.
Awesome. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item 3, which is our consent items. We will entertain a motion to approve all of the consent items if there is one.
I move to approve the consent items. Steve.
Second.
Okay, great. We have a motion from Director Wesolowski and a second from Director Bajaj. We'll go ahead and vote on approving the consent items.
Oh, there we go. Get myself off mute. Director Ahuja.
Approve.
Director Bajaj.
Yes.
Director Racy
Yes.
and Director Waslowski.
Yes.
Okay, great. Our consent items have been passed. We'll go ahead and move on to item 4, which is discussion and action items, starting with 4A. I'll let Kevin explain instead of spending time reading the title.
I apologize. These are legalese titles that are meant to show everything, but they're definitely a mouthful. So let's actually just get right down to this item. Here we go. Yes.
A quick one. I forgot to mention that when we move to approve the consent items, you have to change the number of the authorization for the remote meeting to reflect today's date, not last Thursday's date.
It is.
Okay. Well, you're right.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, so going on to this item, essentially at this point, oh, this is the wrong one. It went down again. Here we go. So this one is regarding a delegation of authority to the general manager to enter into and execute any and all documents required or deemed necessary and or appropriate to take any and all necessary and advisable actions to open a Wells Fargo Business Elite credit card on behalf of the district and to close the district's current Chase credit card account. And of course, the authority shall expire by April 13th, at which point I hope that all this is done. The onus behind all this, again, is because Director Waslowski's very, very long service for the board will be ending in December. And he's the guarantor on the current credit card. And so something needs to happen in the interim between now and then. The reason why a Wells Fargo card is being considered as opposed to just changing the guarantor is because typically guarantors aren't used for governments. And secondly, because the Wells Fargo is the primary bank account of the district. And so it makes sense to have both the credit card and the bank account with the same vendor for consolidation of services, as well as faster transfer of funds. So for example, after the credit card invoice is sort of is approved by a director, we can pay that off with an ACH instead of with a snail mail check. So it's a bit faster as well. The basic difference, the other difference between the card, of course, is that the Wells Fargo card does have an annual fee of $125, but there is a, I want to say it's a 1% cash back. And so that should pay back both the annual fee plus an additional 175. As far as any kind of financial or budgetary impact of this, there's very negligible difference between the two. So staff recommends delegating authority to get this done before December, because our Zoom account is paid with the credit card. So we're hoping to have everything ready and transferred over by December. Any questions?
We'll have to move pretty fast to get it done by December. Because if I understand my termination right, it'll happen sometime in November. And someday in November, I don't think I'll be able to sign anything.
Well, we would have to remove that. We'd actually have to go into a branch and remove the signing authority. So that'll happen. I think we can do that sometime in early December. Because I believe that I'll double check the exact termination date, but I believe there's a few days in December as well.
We'll have to work it out.
Yeah.
Find out what the reality is. So you need it approved. I move to approve this so that you can act as quickly as possible, so that hopefully the transition can happen as quickly as possible. It's fruitless to talk about exactly when it has to, but if I can't sign anything legally, checks or whatever, at some point in November, then we'll be delinquent on our, the Rancho will be delinquent on its credit card during December. That's my concern. But we don't, that's a what if, so I don't want to waste anybody else's time on that what if. Anyway, so I moved to approve this change in credit card vendor, and we couldn't do that last month because we didn't have 4 members to approve it, I believe.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and second that. So with a motion and the second on the floor, we'll go ahead and move into voting.
All right, Director Ahuja,
I think I need to withhold because of Wells Fargo.
abstain. Yep. Director Bajaj,
Yes.
Director Racy,
In favor.
Director Wasowski.
In favor.
Okay, great. This motion passes. We'll go ahead and move on to item.
Congratulations.
Yay.
It's been a long time coming. We'll go ahead and move on to item 4B.
Thank you. So item 4B, this is very exciting for us. This is another delegation item. So, go here. So this one is a delegation of authority to the general manager to negotiate, execute, amend, and/or terminate a master services agreement and statement of work with Civic Plus LLC for recreation management software in an amount not to exceed $11,000 in the first year, following the date of execution of the MSA, $8,000 in the second year, following the date of the execution of the MSA, and $8,000 in the third year. With annual extension options subject to review and approval as to form and legality by County Council. And of course, the delegation shall expire in 2024. So this was identified as something that the district needed in terms of an easy to use electronic registration system that's online, being able to pay online. And so this project was started last year when we selected Perfect Mind as the same recreation vendor. At that time, there was a very big price difference between the two, but staff did prefer Civic Rec. So Civic Rec is the one we're choosing now. Perfect Mind is the one we chose last year. And the reason why that has been changed is, of course, that pricing difference has actually gone down quite a bit. And so it's because of that, I think the preference shifts to Civic Rec. In addition, we did some evaluation where we were calling some folks who are using the software right now. And the reviews that we got from Civic Rec pointed to really strong marketing and other functionality that we could use for outreach. So I think that was also a slam dunk, because in that case, not only would we have easy to use recreation for all of our residents, but we'd also have the ability to do outreach with this software. And that goes in line with the board's desire to have better outreach to the community. So for that reason, this year staff decided that Civic Rec was the platform to do. It's also a year-to-year commitment instead of every 5 years. Let's see here. Right now, and the reason why the board isn't seeing the actual contract is because the MSA and the SOW, that's the Master Services Agreement, and the Statement of Work are both going through negotiation. So the Master Services Agreement has just now finished all the red lines going back and forth between the legal departments. The Statement of Work is being wrapped up right now, and the final red lines have been sent to Civic Rec so that they can either approve or deny them, and then we'll work from there. And of course, there's also a security assessment that is underway. So that should wrap up ideally within the next 2 weeks. And once the contracts are signed, then there's a 3-week implementation period where they assign a team. The team will discuss with us, and then we would kind of figure out what the timeline of implementation would be, and then we get started in November. In terms of the cost of this program, it will be about $41,990 over 5 years. And that's compared to $22,920 that we currently use for Jackrabbit, Skeda, and Shopkeep. So it's 3 different subscriptions, assuming they don't increase their prices. But one of the caveats there is that we do anticipate that there will be staff savings as a result of moving from more than 3 systems, because we also have paper systems that we're using and Excel systems. So we do expect that there will be some savings, which we don't know by how much, but we do believe there will be savings when not only are those systems consolidated, but also a lot of the transactions will be moved from in-person to online. And that should yield very, very good savings. We can't put a number on it. Just don't know how much. So the net difference between those two, not including the staff savings, is expected to be about $19,000 over 5 years. One thing that does need to be included in there is that this does not include an e-payment vendor. So this is just the software itself. The e-payment vendor would be an additional cost, which we will discuss next month. We have identified a vendor and are working through a different contract with them. Is there any questions?
Is there like an estimate for how much the e-payment vendor contract would be?
If you hold on 1 second, I can give you my back of the napkin math. Let me see here. This might take a little bit of time. I can find it and get back to you about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not it's not super pressing, but my thought process is that if it's, I don't know how much everyone else is expecting, but if it's above what's expected, I also don't know how much it would throw off the timeline if we were to approve the contract for the software and the e-vendor at the same time, just so we have a better understanding of holistic expenses. But I don't know what everyone
Sure,
else.
I can speak to that actually. So it's not uncommon for both of these to be passed separately. The big holdup is that 3-week implementation time. And so what it would happen is if it doesn't pass today, which is okay if it doesn't, what it'll do is it'll delay the passage until we have the e-payment vendor contract, which could be at the November meeting. It also may not be. And what happens then is right now with our current implementation timeline, we're already pressing up against spring swim lessons. And so that's part of the reason why. I do have the credit card fee estimates, and it's somewhere between 4,000 and 14,000. This estimate is based on a volume of payments of between 150,000 and 400,000.
Yeah, Kevin, do you have the percentage?
It's 2.85%.
Yeah, that's pretty standard though, right?
Yeah.
Industry-wide. Yeah.
So that's a standard price. We're looking at an absorbed fee model where it's cheaper this way. If we pass it on to customers, it's actually more expensive overall, and it's a pain. So the 2.85%, nobody sees it except for us, and it should be between 4 and 14,000. Actually, that range should be slightly smaller. This is based on other numbers when we didn't know that percentage.
Is that 4 and 14,000 a year?
Yes, yeah. And it goes up based on how much volume comes in. So depending on how successful we are at moving people over to using electronic payments, the more that cost will be. It's important to understand though that those costs are also somewhat counterbalanced by not having so much cash management. Right, so a lot of time goes and energy goes into counting cash, making sure that all of our numbers are correct, depositing cash, checks, keeping checks, depositing checks. So there is some soft savings in not having to manage cash as much, not having someone at the window trying to do a transaction right there. And so that the nature of the work that the office staff will do will change quite a bit. And in fact, the need to actually have an office staff member or two at a time is much less. So again, it's not just an expense, there's a bigger change that would occur.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it's going to be charged only if we use it, right? Depending on the number of people who actually switch is when you're paying the fees. If they don't switch to online payments, you're still not paying the fees.
Correct, yeah.
It's based on.
Sorry. I do expect that much of the money, at least 200,000, should change because swim lessons will be much easier to register online.
Absolutely. I think in today's day and age, everybody wants to do it online. Nobody wants to do the hassle of cash or checks or any of that.
Right. Yeah. There may be some people, but I think cash will mostly be for public swim. You don't want to come in and swipe your card for your $6 entry or your $1 candy at snack bar if you have cash. So I do expect that probably between 200 and 300 in the first year will go towards credit cards, which puts it more in the $6,000 to $8,000 range.
And that makes sense. My primary concern, like cost is secondary to timeline for me. So if it's going to completely mess up the timeline, then I'm totally on board with approving this now and then the e-payment vendor contract at the next meeting. I guess with that, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve this.
And I'll second it.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second on the floor, so we'll go ahead and vote.
Okay, great. Director Ahuja?
Yes, please, approved.
Yes. Director Bajaj?
Yes.
Director Racy?
Yes.
Director Wasowski?
Yes.
All right.
All right, awesome. We'll go ahead and move on to item 6C or 4C, sorry.
Great. Okay, so this one is very similar to the Dewberry Architects professional service agreement. So the board determined that in the strategic plan that we need to do a site master plan. Take a look at the facility and make sure we're offering the types of programs that the residents need now, but also need in the future. Part of that master plan is making sure that we get the right contractors and consultants on board. So unfortunately, it takes two different architects to get the site master plan done. There's some kind of conflict of interest if the first part of the site master plan, which involves sort of figuring out what we need. So basically the architects there are operating in a staff role. They're going to look at what we need. They'll talk to us ideally, as well as members of the public to find out, look at demographics, find out, okay, what types of things are we going to need in a staff role? And then a different architect is going to need to do the design portions. And then therefore there's no conflict of interest between the two. So Dewberry has already been selected and signed on, is under contract, and is working with us currently. The design partnership is the other architect that was determined to fit our needs. And so they would be selected for the second part, which is the actual design. They'll take the information that Dewberry puts together, including the drawings for us, conceptual drawings, and then they'll make that into a reality that we can actually take action on. This we're just doing in advance because we don't want them to become not interested in a year's time when it's time to actually do the work. So by getting them under contract now, then they're obligated to follow through. The contract itself is very similar to the one with Dewberry. The biggest differences really are the charges for different subcontractors are different because their subcontractors are different. So, it's slightly different, but otherwise it's very similar to the Dewberry contract. Any questions on this one?
So there's a conflict of interest by having the same firm come up with what's our site master plan and actually execute it, is what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, it's confusing even to me, but I've been assured by various attorneys that that is how it is. The design or sort of the ideation is done on as a staff member. It would essentially, because the first part of the work, they're operating as a sort of similar to a staff member, then you couldn't turn around and have a staff member do the design work and pay them for it. Does that make sense?
No, but that's okay.
Let's say that I had some design skills. I wouldn't be able to work at Rancho, but then also go and do the design and be paid for it outside of my work at Rancho. That's the idea behind it. And so by splitting it into two different architects, then you avoid that potential conflict of interest if someone decided that that was a problem and decided to sue. Then they're just totally different.
Okay, I see. So the first one is assessing the needs. What are the needs? And the second firm is, all right, we'll come up with plans for fulfilling those needs.
Correct, yes. And finding out what those needs are also includes coming up with potential solutions.
Right.
And so then the second one really takes, okay, these are the potential solutions. Here's that, idea of what it's going to look like. Let's actually sit down, write up plans. We're going to diagram everything, make all the design drawings so that we can actually go out to bid for it.
Yeah, another reason popular joke is shoot all the lawyers, because we have to have two different architectural firms because of a perceived possible conflict of interest. Well, I'll move to approve this PSA. I think I'm really concerned that long-term, somebody needs to second it.
I can send.
The cost of doing any changes is going up enormously with all these contractors having to do all this work for us. But hey, that's you'll see what happens. I won't be on the board to know.
I'm sorry, can I just confirm, was it Misha or Nooper who
Go
seconded?
ahead, Misha.
It's okay. Nipper, you've got it.
Okay, I can second.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor, so we will go ahead and move into voting.
All right, Director Ahuja,
Yes.
Director Bajaj,
Yes.
Director Racy,
Yes.
and Director Waslowski.
Yes.
Alrighty, so this motion passes and we'll go ahead and move on to the next one, which is 4D.
Another delegation of authority. Okay. So let's see where to start. Let's go down. Oh. Sorry, these are really long. Oh. Okay, let me try this the other way. Okay, so going back to the first contract with Dewberry, what the board approved, let's see here, was it in August? Yes, in August was a PSA, a professional services agreement with Dewberry Architects to start the first part of the site master plan. They're approved for up to $150,000 limit. Of course, that doesn't mean that we intend to use all of that. It just means that that's available. Now, a separate project came up involving the per capita grants. And so it seemed like a good plan to have the architects assist us with getting the work done so that we can get the per capita construction done to get and then get reimbursed with per capita grant money. So the professional services agreement lets us issue project agreements with Dewberry. And what that will do is it allows Dewberry to put together a bid package, which we would then go out for public bidding with. Now, typically in a normal setting, what will happen is that Dewberry would come up with a proposal. That proposal would come before the board. The board would look at it and say, yes, this looks like a worthy project. We're going to approve it. And that would let Dewberry go back, do the work, put the big bid package together, go out to bid. And then after several weeks, then any contractors and consultants who've applied would come back together. The board would then do an award. In this case, because we're, again, on a very tight schedule, instead, what we're asking for is for a delegation of authority to approve the project agreement so that we can at least get the bid package put together. Now, this will approve funding to actually get that bid package put together, but the bid package will need to be approved by the board before it goes out to the public. And then the award will also need to be approved by the board. What that means is that there will probably need to be several special meetings in the next few months. So right now, what's happening is Dewberry's putting together some proposals for us. We're looking to do potentially the pool deck, some chemical room upgrades, and then this will likely trigger some ADA compliance items, which they'll need to be done. So those are probably going to be the bathroom, potentially ramps or parking. The per capita grant is $177,000. The district's required to kick in 20%, which means that the total amount that could be spent on renovations is more than $200,000. Now, because there's a set amount of money that we're trying to go towards, we're trying to back into that number and find out how many projects we can do with that number. And that's why it's important to be able to issue the PAs and to be a little bit nimble with how this is done. Anyway, is there any particular questions about this one?
Given the number of steps you're talking about, it sounds like we're not going to be having this done this year.
It's more tight than I want, yes. So
So-
the delay came in as a result of Dewberry was having trouble finding qualified consultants to help with them. Because if you'll recall, we actually contracted with them in August and they did a site walkthrough in September. And it took until just a few weeks ago to actually identify an engineering firm that was willing to work with them on this project. And they just did the walkthrough last week. So it's not looking great, but you know, these things are out of our control and we still need to move quickly if we're going to access these grant funds. So there's,
Right, because they'll have to be done next winter, I guess.
yeah. Ideally this winter. And there's, depending on how long things take, we could try to squeeze it in maybe spring break, for example, or maybe have an extended spring break, maybe 1 week or 2 weeks. So, but the main thing is that we do need to get this work done. We need to get the money spent and then be reimbursed for it as soon as possible.
Well, not to be a naysayer in another way, but you mentioned that when they get their stuff together, it has to be approved by a board at a board meeting. And in the course of the next couple of months, our ability to get a board meeting with a quorum between elections and resignations and everything else, I'm not sure how whether that'll be possible. I think that's the polite way to put it. We'll see. I mean, it just seems impossible to me. But I
It
hope
will
I'm
be
wrong.
tight. It will be tight.
Tight is a good word. Anyway, I move to approve this.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we will move into voting.
Director Ahuja,
Yep.
Director Bajaj,
Yes.
Director Racy,
Yes.
and Director Wasowski.
Yes.
All right, so we have passed all of our discussion and action items. So we'll go ahead and move on to information and discussion, starting with 5A, the general manager's report.
Great, thank you. Okay, so there weren't any unplanned closures in September. We did lose access to the back end of our website for at least a week. Currently, we have it back online, we have it fixed, and I'm looking into a contract to have someone take care of the back end for us. It's a little bit above what we can manage without an IT department, so it makes sense to outsource this type of thing so it doesn't happen again. Let's see here. Long term, of course, the website will be overhauled as part of the outreach plan. But for now, this will have to do. In terms of our work plan, this is no longer spring, that's a typo. Board orientation is late. The site master plan we just went over. Facility improvement projects, obviously going slower than we'd like, as Director Wasowski has pointed out. Recreation management software, we already talked about. E-payment vendor, we'll bring that for next meeting. And fall operations, just in case anyone is not familiar with this type of season. October is the final month of swim lessons. And so this is basically the very tail end where swim lessons will end at the end of the month. So most of our staffing issues are more or less resolved at this point. And the big issue that we run into as far as operations is that our swim lessons end up canceling on us as the weather gets colder. So they'll make a commitment earlier in the year and then decide, oh, it's actually kind of cold, and then they'll cancel. And so we have to manage the schedule as it starts having gaps and holes. We'll try to consolidate lessons, things like that. So we have to get a little bit creative to get keep our programs running. Another interesting thing is that the financial report is in a new fiscal year now, so it's just showing July. The very nice thing about this particular one is that this is the first time that since we made a change last July to start doing accruals every month. So prior to this, what would happen is we do a conversion at the end of the fiscal year, which ends at the end of June. So let's say someone purchased a swim lesson in May that happens in July. We would actually take that money and then we would put it into July in our reports. I mean, obviously the money's in the bank, but in our reporting, then it would happen all in July. But because it would only happen once a year, a bunch of money would be taken out of June, which may have been collected in May, June, or even earlier. And then it's all dumped in July, whether it's the services delivered in July or in August. And so what happens is the June looks very negative. The net income looks very negative because all of that money is being taken out of the report, and then it's all dumped into July. And it gives kind of an inflated sense of how much money is coming in July. So this one is much more accurate, which is very nice. Actually, let's take a look at it. This is something that makes very fun stuff. You can actually see the effects of the staff shortage. So this is the report here. And you can see here that our personnel expenses, this is this year, 105,000, is actually less than last year, which is 114,000. So you can see that the effects of the staffing shortage are very real in the numbers. That's an 8% decrease year over year. And the other thing you can see is that our aquatics is essentially flat, despite the fact that the board passed a pretty large fee increase for the swim lessons. So this shows that, there was a lot less lessons delivered in July compared to last year. So this is the type of comparison that's possible with monthly accruals as opposed to annual accruals. This would have been impossible with doing it the old way. So just thought I'd point that out. And I think that's about it for that. Other than that, just the other news really is just that the state of emergency will be lifted in March, which means that we'll probably have to return to in-person meetings as of March.
Okay, well, if there's no comments, then we can go ahead and move on to our final item, the sad one, 5B, which is the resignation of Director Ahuja.
Okay.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So I did go ahead and take a look at the board policies, the bylaws, and of course the government code, which relates to this. Initially, staff thinking was that maybe it might be possible to do an appointment set to take effect in the future, so that way there would be no interruption. Unfortunately, there's no legal mechanism to make that happen, and so we actually have to wait until January to begin the process. Typically, there's a few decisions that need to be made in this case. They're not going to be made tonight, as this is a discussion item only, but the couple decisions are whether to do an appointment process, a special election, or to do nothing. Typically, of course, the thing to do is to do an appointment process. The special election costs a lot of money. It's about $150,000. And doing nothing is usually only done when the board can't act, either because it's not a quorum or no agreement can be made. The second decision is to figure out a selection criteria and a process for filling the vacancy. So what I've done is I've attached the letter of resignation, of course, but also the policy for the board vacancy, as well as the selection criteria and process that we used in 2020, just for discussion purposes. So for the selection criteria, of course, Any potential replacements must be a resident and a registered voter within the district boundaries. They have to, of course, complete everything. This is the old. This is just for discussion. These are some of what an ideal candidate should hold. This can be changed, of course. Again, attending a board meeting is kind of nice, just so that people know what they're getting into. Attending board orientation. I don't know about prior to the selection process, but these are some types of things that could be helpful. Some adverse characteristics, for example, so questionable reputation. If someone's potentially involved in some questionable activities, that would be something to consider, because once they're part of the board, then sometimes they're out of, their outside activities can have an influence or on the reputation of the district. So some things to consider like that. As far as the selection process, we used a ranked choice voting method to give the highest chance of actually selecting the one candidate, right? And so most of us are very familiar with just not a ranked choice, just the regular choice. You vote for one person and then it counts. The problem is with board directors, there's always a chance of deadlocking. Again, it's possible to deadlock and then maybe do it again, but to take that out of the picture, another way to do it is ranked choice, right? So you pick your first, your second, and your third choice. Yes. Yes.
The problem is with one director resigning and another one who never shows up for meetings the last few months, you will have a problem having a quorum of at least 3 to hold a meeting at all.
Would this be in February? So we would have new directors?
This would actually be in January.
Oh, January, yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin, there's 3 people who are up for election this time, right?
Yes.
And there's 2 members you need, or 3 members you need. There's 3 people. I just got the ballot.
Oh, yeah, but there's only 2 positions that are open.
So there's Misha's position, there's your position, and there's my position now. So there's 3, and there's 3 people who are up for selection.
That's another matter. It has been stated by myself offline that yes, whoever gets the third amount of votes would be a natural person to nominate to fill your vacancy. However, again, you have to have 3 board members to get together to do that at least.
Yeah.
So
So my question, Kevin, was going to be, so my resignation is as of December. So don't the new board members take effect as of January?
December.
Oh, so then I can pull in my resignation so that it can be effective as of November. So I see my resignation is because of work, right? And because I cannot vote on Wells Fargo, and just by the looks of it, the pool is moving more and more towards Wells Fargo, and it's becoming more of an hassle.
Mhm.
So that's the other thing that, if I resign earlier, does that help you guys? I don't want to leave you guys in the lurch.
actually, having you at the November meeting, which I'll still be able to attend at least the beginning of, will help us have a quorum for one more meeting. After that, it's going to be very hard to get.
So I can attend the November meeting if I resign end of November, if that helps.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay, so Kevin, why don't you just discuss it with the council, and my resignation, because for work, I need to resign. See, I need it 31st of December.
Yes,
But,
absolutely.
or earlier. But I definitely, sorry, go ahead.
We will have 3 board members at that time, because two will be elected,
Yeah.
and Nakul is still seated. That's 3. So long as those 3 can attend a meeting, then one additional one can be appointed. Now, whether it's this is just for discussion purposes, or potentially simply appointing the third candidate, whoever doesn't make it onto the board, all of those are totally valid options.
Right. So, but just keep in mind that I definitely don't want to leave the board in a lurch where you guys don't have a quorum for the meeting.
Right.
So my resignation date is flexible. Okay, so discuss it with the legal counsel and let me know, and I can modify it accordingly.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if there's no other comments, we can go ahead and continue this discussion another time. Cool. With that, I adjourn this meeting at, oh, well, we need to vote. Does anyone oppose to adjourning this meeting? Hearing none, we will go ahead and adjourn at 7:17.